The gunshot that shattered August Garrett's heart didn't come from a revolver, but from the mouth of the woman he'd planned to marry when she told him she was leaving for a man with a bigger ranch and fuller pockets. He stood in the dusty main street of Calico, California, watching Melissa's wagon disappear toward the horizon in May of 1881, feeling like every dream he'd built since arriving in this silver mining town had crumbled to worthless ore. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly on his shoulders as miners and townspeople pretended not to stare at the spectacle of a man being abandoned in broad daylight. And August couldn't decide what burned worse, the humiliation or the genuine ache in his chest where love used to live. He'd met Melissa 6 months earlier when she'd arrived on the stage from San Francisco, all silk dresses and painted parasols, looking for adventure in the mining camps that dotted the Mojave Desert landscape. August had been working as a ranch hand on a modest spread outside town, saving every dollar to buy his own piece of land someday. She'd smiled at him in the mercantile, and he'd been lost. 3 months of courtship, a proposal under the stars, and plans for a simple wedding had followed. He'd thought she understood that he was building something real, something lasting, even if it took time. He'd been wrong. "Forget her, August," his friend Tommy called from the saloon doorway. "Any woman who'd leave a good man for gold coins isn't worth the tears." But August wasn't crying. He was too stunned for tears, too empty for anger. He simply turned and walked toward the stable where he kept his horse, a sturdy roan mare named Copper. If he was going to fall apart, he'd do it somewhere private, away from the pitying glances and whispered gossip that would fuel conversations for weeks. He rode out of Calico without a destination in mind, letting Copper pick her way along the rocky trails that wound through the desert hills. The landscape here was brutal and beautiful, all burnt sienna rock formations and hardy creosote bushes that somehow thrived in conditions that would kill gentler plants. The sun was starting its descent toward the western mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold that reminded August of better days, of hope that now felt foolish. He'd been riding for perhaps an hour when he heard the sound, a voice calling out, thin and desperate against the evening wind. August reined Copper to a stop and listened. There it was again, coming from somewhere off the main trail, down a ravine where shadows were already gathering. Every instinct told him to be cautious. This was wild country and tricks weren't uncommon. But something in that voice, the genuine fear in it, pulled him forward. He guided Copper carefully down the slope, rocks sliding under her hooves until he saw the source of the calls. A woman sat beside an overturned wagon, its wheel clearly broken, with no horse or mule in sight. She was trying to stand but kept collapsing, and as August drew closer, he could see her ankle was badly swollen. She looked up at his approach, and even in the fading light he could see the wariness in her eyes, the calculation of whether he represented rescue or a different kind of danger. "Easy," August said, dismounting slowly, keeping his hands visible. "I heard you calling. Looks like you're in some trouble." The woman was perhaps 23 or 24, with dark blonde hair that had fallen loose from its pins, and a simple cotton dress covered in dust. Her face was sunburned across the nose and cheeks, suggesting she'd been out here for hours. What struck August most were her eyes, an unusual shade of amber brown that held intelligence and determination despite her obvious pain. "My wheel broke about 2 hours ago," she said, her voice rough from calling for help. "My mule bolted. I tried to walk back to the main road, but I twisted my ankle in a gopher hole." She gestured helplessly at her surroundings. "I didn't think anyone would come this way before dark." "You're lucky," August said, kneeling to examine her ankle without touching her. This trail doesn't see much traffic. May I take a look at that injury? She hesitated, then nodded. August gently lifted the hem of her dress just enough to see the ankle, which was swollen to nearly twice its normal size and already turning purple. It's bad, but I don't think it's broken. You won't be walking on it for a while, though. Where were you headed, Calico? She said. I was coming from my father's claim up in the hills. He's a prospector and I bring him supplies every 2 weeks. I'm Daisy Zimmerman. August Garrett. I work a ranch outside Calico. He stood and surveyed the situation. The wagon was too damaged to repair here, and darkness was coming fast. Miss Zimmerman, I can't fix your wagon tonight and it's not safe to leave you here. I'm going to have to take you back to town on my horse. Is there someone there who will be looking for you? My brother Daniel runs the boarding house on 2nd Street. He'll be worried sick by now. Daisy tried to stand again, stubbornness written across her features, but her ankle gave out immediately. August caught her before she could fall, and for a moment they were close enough that he could see the flecks of gold in her eyes, smell the desert sage that clung to her hair. Easy now, he said, steadying her. Pride's a good thing, but so is accepting help when you need it. Something in his tone must have resonated, because Daisy stopped fighting and nodded. I'm not usually this helpless. Today has been exceptionally terrible. I understand terrible days, August said, and there was enough weight in his words that Daisy looked at him sharply, reading something in his expression that made her own face soften with sympathy. Getting Daisy onto Copper took some maneuvering, with August lifting her as gently as possible while she bit her lip against the pain. He swung up behind her, keeping one arm around her waist to steady her, acutely aware of the impropriety, but knowing there was no alternative. Daisy sat stiffly at first, clearly uncomfortable with the intimacy of their position, but as they started the careful journey back toward the main trail, she gradually relaxed against him. Thank you, she said quietly, for stopping. Not everyone would have. I almost didn't, August admitted. I was pretty deep in my own troubles, but I'm glad I heard you. They rode in silence for a while, Copper picking her way carefully through the twilight. The desert was beautiful at this hour, the harsh edges softened by shadows and the first stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. A coyote called in the distance, answered by another, their voices eerie and wild. Can I ask what troubles would have a man riding alone into the desert at sunset? Daisy's voice was soft, not prying, just offering an ear if he wanted it. August surprised himself by answering. Maybe it was the anonymity of speaking to a stranger, or maybe it was the fact that this day had already stripped him raw, and there was nothing left to protect. My fiancée left me today. Decided she'd rather marry a mine owner from Nevada with 3 times the land and 10 times the money. He felt Daisy's sharp intake of breath. I'm sorry, that's cruel. It's practical, August said, and he was surprised to find his voice steady. She wants security, wants pretty things, wants a big house. I'm a ranch hand with dreams of maybe owning my own spread someday. In her calculation, I didn't add up. Then her calculation was wrong, Daisy said with surprising fierceness. Money runs out, mines play out, land can be lost. But a good man, that's worth more than all the silver in these hills. August felt something shift in his chest, not healing exactly, but maybe the first easing of the tight band of pain that had been squeezing his heart since Melissa's wagon rolled away. That's a nice thought, but it doesn't match much with reality, does it? Everyone wants security. Security and greed aren't the same thing, Daisy countered. There's nothing wrong with wanting stability, a home, safety. But if you love someone, really love them, you build those things together. You don't abandon ship at the first sign you might have to work for it. There was conviction in her voice that spoke of personal experience. August found himself curious about this woman, about what had shaped her philosophy. But before he could ask, Calico's lights appeared in the distance, the town glowing against the dark desert like a small constellation fallen to earth. The ride back to town took another 40 minutes, and by the time they reached the main street, full night had fallen. Curious faces appeared in windows and doorways as August rode straight to the boarding house Daisy had mentioned. A two-story structure with a painted sign reading Zimmerman's Lodging, clean beds and fair prices. A man burst through the door before August could dismount, mid-20s with the same amber-brown eyes as Daisy. "Daisy, where have you been? I was about to organize a search party. My wagon broke down, Daniel. Mr. Garrett here rescued me." Daisy's voice was tired now, the adrenaline of the ordeal wearing off. August dismounted and carefully lifted Daisy down, her brother immediately taking her weight. "Her ankle's badly sprained. She needs a doctor to look at it and probably a week or two of staying off it completely." Daniel's face was tight with worry as he looked at his sister's injury. "I'll send for Doc Morrison right away. Mr. Garrett, I can't thank you enough. If you'd like a room tonight, it's yours free of charge and breakfast in the morning." "That's not necessary," August started, but Daniel cut him off. "It's necessary to me. My sister's all the family I have left. Please let me show some gratitude." Daisy was looking at August with those unusual eyes, and something passed between them, a connection forged in crisis and honest conversation under the stars. "Please stay," she said. "I'd like to thank you properly when I'm not half dead from pain and exhaustion." August found himself nodding. "All right, thank you." The next hour was a bustle of activity. Doc Morrison arrived, a gruff man in his 60s who examined Daisy's ankle with practiced efficiency and pronounced it a bad sprain but not broken, prescribing rest, elevation, and cold compresses. Daniel showed August to a clean room on the second floor and insisted on bringing up a hot meal and coffee. August ate mechanically, his body only now registering its own exhaustion, when he finally lay down in the boarding house bed, staring at the ceiling. His mind was a confused tangle. This morning he'd been an engaged man with a clear future. Tonight he was alone, his dreams scattered like ashes, and yet somewhere in the wreckage of this terrible day, he'd found something unexpected. Not romance. He wasn't fool enough to mistake rescue and gratitude for that, but maybe a reminder that the world held more than disappointment and betrayal. There were still good people, still moments of connection that mattered. He thought of Daisy's words, "A good man, that's worth more than all the silver in these hills." He wanted to believe it. He fell asleep trying to convince himself it might be true. Morning came with golden sunlight streaming through the window and the smell of fresh coffee and bacon rising from downstairs. August dressed and descended to find the boarding house dining room bustling with activity. A dozen or so residents sat at long tables, eating breakfast and talking in the comfortable way of people who shared space regularly. Daniel spotted him immediately and waved him over to a smaller table near the kitchen. "Mr. Garrett, please sit. How did you sleep?" "Better than expected," August admitted, taking the offered chair. "And please call me August. Then you must call me Daniel." The younger man poured coffee from a pot, and a woman emerged from the kitchen with a laden plate, eggs, bacon, biscuits, and fried potatoes. "My sister wanted to see you if you have time after breakfast. She's upstairs resting like the doctor ordered, though keeping her in bed is like trying to cage a wild Mustang." August smiled at that. "She struck me as stubborn." "Stubborn doesn't begin to cover it," Daniel said with obvious affection. "Our parents died 3 years ago, cholera outbreak that swept through the mining camps. Daisy was 20 then. I was 22. We inherited this boarding house from our father, and the supply run to his old mining claim that Daisy insists on maintaining twice a month. She thinks she can strike silver up there, though the claim hasn't produced anything but dust and hope for 5 years. Why does she keep trying? August asked, genuinely curious. Daniel's expression turned thoughtful. I think it's her way of staying connected to our father. He believed in that claim until the day he died, convinced the next tunnel would be the one. Daisy inherited his optimism along with his stubbornness. He paused, studying August with an assessing look. She also told me about your situation, about your fiancé. I'm sorry. August felt his jaw tighten. News travels fast. My sister and I don't keep secrets from each other, Daniel said gently. And she wanted me to understand that you helped her despite dealing with your own heartbreak. That speaks to your character. Before August could respond, another figure entered the dining room, and August felt his stomach drop. Melissa stood in the doorway, dressed in a new traveling suit that probably cost more than August made in a month, a tall man with silver-streaked hair and expensive boots at her side. She saw August and went pale, clearly not expecting to encounter him in a boarding house dining room. The man beside her, who August assumed was her new fiancé, followed her gaze and frowned. August, Melissa said, her voice uncertain. I didn't know you were staying here. Why would you? August kept his voice level, though his hands tightened around his coffee cup. You made your choice yesterday. What I do now isn't your concern. The tall man stepped forward, puffing up slightly. Now see here, there's no need for hostility. Melissa explained the situation. You're a ranch hand, I'm a mine owner. It's simple economics. Charles, please, Melissa said, touching his arm, but the man, Charles, continued. I can offer her a life you never could. A real house, security, social standing. You can't compete with that, and you know it. Something hot and angry flared in August's chest, but before he could speak, a new voice cut through the tension. Excuse me, but I couldn't help overhearing. Daisy stood in the doorway that led to the stairs, leaning heavily on a crutch Daniel must have fashioned for her, her ankle wrapped and elevated slightly. Despite the injury, she carried herself with dignity, her amber eyes blazing. Did you just reduce a woman's choice of husband to economics? As if she were buying a horse, Charles blinked, clearly not expecting to be challenged. I beg your pardon, miss, but this is a private conversation. In a public dining room. Daisy hobbled forward, and August stood instinctively, ready to help if she needed it. I don't think so. And since Mr. Garrett rescued me from a very dangerous situation yesterday, showing courage, kindness, and genuine character, I feel qualified to comment on his worth. Melissa's face was turning red. This doesn't concern you. You're right, it doesn't, Daisy agreed. But I've watched people chase silver in these hills for years. Some find it, most don't, and all of it can disappear overnight when a mine plays out or a vein runs dry. So forgive me if I'm not impressed by your fiancé's economic arguments. She turned to August, her expression softening. A man who stops to help a stranger when his own heart is breaking, that's worth more than any mine. The dining room had gone silent, all the boarders watching the drama unfold. August felt exposed, raw, but also oddly defended. This woman who barely knew him was standing up for him, and there was something powerful in that. Charles sputtered. Now you listen here, I think you should leave, Daniel said quietly, but with steel underneath. You're upsetting my guests. For a moment, August thought Charles might argue, but Melissa tugged on his arm. Let's go, Charles. We can find breakfast elsewhere. They left, Melissa not looking back, and the tension in the room slowly dissolved as conversations resumed. Daisy swayed slightly, and August was at her side in an instant, offering support. "You shouldn't be on that ankle," he said, helping her to his table. "Probably not," she admitted, sinking into a chair with a grimace. "But I heard her voice from upstairs, and I couldn't let her and that pompous fool tear you down without saying something." "You didn't have to do that," August said, but he was grateful, more grateful than he could express. "Yes, I did." Daisy accepted coffee from her brother with a grateful nod. "I meant what I said yesterday, and I meant what I said just now. Money doesn't measure a person's worth, and I'm tired of watching people forget that." Daniel brought Daisy a plate of food, shaking his head with fond exasperation. "You're supposed to be resting." "I'm sitting, aren't I?" "That's resting." Daisy turned back to August. "I wanted to thank you properly. You saved my life yesterday. If you hadn't come along that trail, I would have spent the night in the desert, injured and alone. That's not a small thing." "Anyone would have done the same," August said, uncomfortable with the praise. "That's not true, and you know it." Daisy's gaze was direct, unflinching. "My brother tells me you work at the Henderson Ranch." "I did," August corrected. "I was saving to buy my own land someday, but I'm not sure what I'm doing now." "Our boarding house could use a handyman," Daniel said suddenly. "The place always needs repairs, and with Daisy laid up for the next few weeks, I'm going to be stretched thin managing everything. It doesn't pay as much as ranch work, but it comes with room and board, and it's honest work." August looked between the siblings, seeing the genuine offer in their faces. Part of him wanted to refuse, to not accept what felt like charity, but another part recognized this for what it was: a lifeline. A chance to figure out what came next without the constant reminder of Melissa at the Henderson Ranch, where she'd visited him dozens of times. "I accept," he said. "Thank you." The next few weeks fell into an unexpected rhythm. August threw himself into work at the boarding house, fixing loose boards, repairing a leaky roof, reinforcing the stable where guests could board their horses. The work was satisfying in a way ranch work hadn't always been. Here, he could see immediate results, could take pride in each completed task, and he spent time with Daisy. It started innocently enough. She was confined to her room or the downstairs sitting area, frustrated by her immobility, and August would take breaks from his work to check on her. They'd talk, casual conversations at first about the weather or the boarding house guests, but gradually deepening into real discussions about their lives, their dreams, their disappointments. August learned that Daisy had been engaged once, 2 years ago, to a merchant's son from San Bernardino. He'd seemed steady, reliable, had promised her partnership and respect. Then he'd met her father, seen the modest boarding house and the struggling mining claim, and suddenly decided he needed to marry someone from a better family. He'd broken the engagement publicly, humiliating Daisy and spreading rumors that she'd been chasing his money. It wasn't true, Daisy told August one afternoon as they sat in the boarding house garden, such as it was, a small plot with a few hardy plants that tolerated the desert heat. "I never cared about his money. I cared about who I thought he was, but it turned out that person didn't exist. He was just playing a role." "I know the feeling," August said quietly. "I thought Melissa loved me. I thought we were building something together. Turns out she was just waiting for something better to come along." "We're a pair of fools," Daisy said, but there was humor in her voice now, not bitterness. "Falling for illusions." "Maybe," August agreed. "Or maybe we're just people who believe the best in others." "That's not foolish, even if it sometimes leads to pain." Daisy looked at him then, really looked at him, and August felt something shift in the air between them, a charge like the electricity before a desert storm. He was suddenly very aware of how close they were sitting, how the afternoon light caught the gold in her hair, how her eyes held warmth and intelligence, and something that might have been growing affection. August, she said softly. But before she could continue, Daniel called from the house that a supplier had arrived and needed August's help unloading. The moment broke, but it left something hanging in the air between them, a possibility neither of them was quite ready to name. As June arrived and the desert heat intensified, Daisy's ankle healed enough for her to move around with a cane. The doctor had been impressed with her recovery, attributing it to her youth and stubbornness. She'd laughed at that, but August could see she was eager to get back to normal life, chafing at the restrictions the injury had imposed. One evening, as August was finishing repairs on the boarding house porch, Daisy came out to sit with him, watching the sun paint the desert sky in impossible shades of red and purple. "I need to make a supply run up to the mining claim next week," she said without preamble. "The doctor says my ankle is strong enough for riding now, and I'm weeks behind schedule. My father would be furious if he knew how long I'd let his claim sit unattended." August's hand stilled on the board he was sanding. "Is it safe for you to go alone?" "I've been doing it for 3 years," Daisy pointed out. "And last time you ended up stranded with a broken wagon wheel and a sprained ankle," August countered. "At least take someone with you." "Daniel can't leave the boarding house," Daisy said. "We're fully booked through the summer with miners and prospectors passing through, and I can't afford to hire help." August set down his tools and turned to face her fully. "I'll go with you." Daisy's eyes widened. "August, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to." He realized as he said it that it was true. The thought of Daisy alone in the desert hills, vulnerable to any number of dangers, made his chest tight with worry. When had that happened? When had this woman become someone whose safety mattered so much to him? "It's a 2-day journey there and back," Daisy warned. "We'd have to camp overnight in the desert. People might talk." "People always talk," August said. "Let them. You need someone to watch your back, and I need—" He paused, searching for words. "I need to be useful. To matter to someone, even if it's just as extra security on a supply run." Daisy's expression softened, and she reached out to touch his hand where it rested on the porch railing. The contact sent warmth up August's arm, made his heart beat faster. "You matter, August. You matter more than you know." They left early the following Monday, just after dawn when the air was still cool and the desert was quiet. They'd packed supplies carefully, loading 2 horses with food, water, mining equipment, and basic camping gear. Daniel had watched them go with obvious worry, making August promise 3 times to keep his sister safe. The ride out of Calico took them northeast into the hills, where prospectors had been digging for silver since the rush began a few years earlier. The landscape here was even more dramatic than around town, all soaring rock formations and deep canyons, beautiful and treacherous in equal measure. Daisy was a good rider, August noticed. She sat her horse confidently, navigating the rocky trails with the ease of long practice. She pointed out landmarks as they rode, telling stories about the area with obvious love for the harsh beauty surrounding them. "My father brought me up here the first time when I was 16, she said as they stopped to water the horses at a small spring. "He just filed the claim and was so excited, so sure this was going to be the big strike that would change our lives. I think I fell in love with the desert that day, with the wildness of it, the way it doesn't apologize for being difficult." "Do you really think there's silver in your father's claim?" August asked, curious about what kept drawing her back. Daisy was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the rugged landscape. "Honestly, I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But I think I keep coming back for the same reason my father kept digging. It's not really about the silver. It's about the possibility. The hope that maybe around the next corner, through the next tunnel, something incredible is waiting." That's a good way to live, August said. Looking for the possibility in things. Is it? Daisy turned to look at him, genuine question in her eyes. Or is it just another way of refusing to accept reality? I think there's a difference between hope and delusion, August said slowly, thinking it through. Hope says things could be better and works toward making them better. Delusion ignores what's real and refuses to adapt. Your father's mining might not have paid off in silver, but it gave him purpose, gave him something to work toward. That has value even if it never struck a rich vein. Daisy smiled, and it transformed her face, made her beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with regular features or perfect skin, and everything to do with genuine joy. I like the way you think, August Garrett. I like you, August said, and then froze, not having meant to say it out loud. But Daisy didn't look uncomfortable or awkward. Instead, her smile deepened and she stepped closer to him, close enough that he could see the flecks of gold in her unusual eyes. I like you too. I have for weeks now. I just wasn't sure if you were ready to hear it. Ready. August's heart was pounding now, hope and fear and something that felt dangerously like falling mixing together in his chest. Your heart was broken, Daisy said gently. I didn't want to be a rebound, a way for you to prove you could still be wanted. If we're going to be something, I need to know it's real. August understood what she was asking, and he respected her for asking it. He thought about Melissa, about the pain of her leaving, and realized with surprise that it had faded to a dull ache, more wounded pride than genuine heartbreak. What he felt looking at Daisy was entirely different, sharper and deeper and more real than anything he'd felt in those 6 months of courtship with a woman who'd never really seen him. It's real, he said quietly. What I felt for Melissa was real too at the time, but it was based on who I thought she was, who I wanted her to be. You, Daisy, I know who you are. I've seen you stubborn and hurt and fierce and kind. I've talked with you, really talked about things that matter. And I like you, not some idealized version, but exactly who you are right now. Daisy's eyes were bright, and August realized she was fighting tears. That's the most honest thing anyone's ever said to me. You deserve honesty, August said. You deserve someone who sees you and chooses you. Not your money or your status or what you can offer, just you. So do you, Daisy whispered. And then she was kissing him, her hands on his face, and August was kissing her back. All the loneliness and pain of the past weeks dissolving in the reality of this moment. This woman. This unexpected gift of connection. They broke apart slowly, and Daisy was smiling, really smiling, joy written across her features. We should probably keep riding. We want to reach the claim before dark. Probably, August agreed, but neither of them moved for another long moment, just standing close, memorizing this moment when everything changed. The mining claim was another hour's ride into the hills, marked by a weathered sign that read, Zimmerman Claim. No trespassing, and a small wooden structure built into the hillside that served as both storage and shelter. The mine entrance was a dark opening in the rock face, shored up with timber, leading back into the mountain. They spent the rest of the afternoon unloading supplies and checking the claim's boundaries. Daisy showed August where her father had been digging, the various tunnels that branched off the main shaft, all of them so far producing nothing but empty rock and crushed dreams. He was systematic about it, Daisy explained, holding a lantern as they explored one of the tunnels. Every tunnel is numbered and mapped. He kept detailed records of what he found or didn't find in each section. She ran her hand along the rock wall with something like affection. I always admired that about him. He never gave up, but he also never stopped learning, adapting his approach. He sounds like a good man, August said. He was. He and my mother both. They were partners in the truest sense, built everything together from nothing. That's what I always wanted, not riches or status, just someone to build a life with, someone who'd be a true partner. She looked at August, and the meaning in her gaze was clear. They camped that night under the stars, building a fire and cooking a simple meal of beans and bread. The desert night was cool, a relief after the day's heat, and the sky was so clear that the stars seemed close enough to touch, a river of light stretching across the darkness. August and Daisy sat close to the fire, talking quietly about their pasts, their hopes for the future, all the small details that people share when they're building something real. August told her about growing up on a farm in Missouri, coming west after his parents died looking for opportunity, and finding mostly hard work and modest wages. Daisy told him about the boarding house, about the community of transient souls who pass through, each with their own dreams of striking it rich in California. Most of them never find what they're looking for, Daisy said, staring into the fire. But a few do, and those successes keep everyone else hoping. It's like the whole territory is infected with this fever of possibility. Is that a bad thing? August asked. No, I don't think so. Without that fever, without that hope, this would just be empty desert. The possibility of something better, that's what makes people brave enough to try. She turned to look at him, firelight dancing across her face. That's what you're doing, isn't it? After what happened with Melissa, you could have given up, could have decided love wasn't worth the risk. But you're here, trying again. I'm here because of you, August said simply, because you make me believe it's worth trying. They talked long into the night until the fire burned down to embers and the cold drove them to their separate bedrolls laid out on opposite sides of the dying flames. August lay awake for a long time, listening to the sounds of the desert, the distant call of an owl, the rustle of some small creature moving through the brush, and underneath it all, the soft sound of Daisy's breathing. He felt more at peace than he had in months, maybe years, as if something that had been broken inside him was finally starting to heal. Morning came with spectacular sunrise, the sky turning from black to deep purple to pink to gold as the sun crested the eastern mountains. August woke to find Daisy already up, standing at the edge of their camp looking out at the desert, her hair loose and catching the early light. I love this time of day, she said when she noticed him approaching. Everything feels possible in the morning, like the whole world is starting fresh. Feels that way, August agreed, coming to stand beside her. He wanted to touch her, to take her hand or put his arm around her shoulders, but he held back, unsure of the boundaries now that they'd confessed their feelings. Daisy solved the problem by reaching for his hand, lacing her fingers through his with natural ease. They stood like that for several minutes, just watching the day begin, connected and comfortable in the silence. They spent the morning doing maintenance on the mine, checking the support timbers, clearing debris from the entrance, tasks that Daisy explained she did every visit to keep the claim viable. August found himself studying the rock walls with new interest, looking for the telltale gleam of silver ore. You won't see it if there is any, Daisy said, catching his expression. Silver ore doesn't necessarily look silver. It's usually mixed with other minerals, looks like regular rock unless you know what to look for. You have to take samples, test them, assay them. It's a whole process. Your father taught you all this? August asked, impressed. He taught me everything about mining. Said if we were going to be a mining family, we should all understand the work. There was pride in her voice, and sadness too, the ever-present grief for parents lost too soon. They were preparing to ride back to Calico when August noticed something odd about one section of the tunnel wall. The rock there looked different, darker, with a greenish tinge he hadn't seen elsewhere. "Daisy, come look at this." She came immediately, holding up the lantern to study where he was pointing. Her breath caught. "That's August, that could be silver ore. That green color, that's copper sulfide, and where there's copper sulfide in these hills, there's often silver." "Could be nothing," August cautioned, not wanting to build false hope. "Could be," Daisy agreed, but her hands were shaking slightly as she used a pick to carefully extract a sample of the greenish rock. "But it's worth testing. There's an assay office in Calico. They can tell us what this is." The ride back to town felt charged with possibility, though both of them tried not to talk about it too much, superstition keeping them from voicing the hope that maybe, just maybe, Daisy's father's faith in his claim had been justified after all. They arrived back in Calico, late afternoon of the second day, tired and dusty and sunburned. But there was energy between them, excitement that had as much to do with the rock sample in Daisy's saddlebag as with what had developed between them personally. Daniel met them at the boarding house with relief written across his face. "Thank God you're back safe. How did it go?" "Fine," Daisy said, but she was grinning. "Better than fine. August found something in one of the tunnels, might be silver ore. We need to get it tested." "The assay office is closed for the day," Daniel said, "but first thing tomorrow we'll take it over." He looked between them, and something in their body language, the way they stood close together, the comfort between them, must have tipped him off because his expression shifted to understanding, and then pleasure. "Something else happened on this trip, didn't it?" Daisy blushed but didn't deny it. "August and we've come to an understanding." "An understanding," Daniel repeated, his smile growing. "Is that what we're calling it? August, are your intentions toward my sister honorable?" "Daniel," Daisy protested, but August answered seriously. "They are. I care about your sister, and if she'll have me, I'd like to court her properly." "I'll have you," Daisy said, looking at him with such open affection that August felt his heart expand in his chest. Daniel clapped August on the shoulder. "Then welcome to the family, properly this time. Now both of you get cleaned up. You smell like desert and horse." The next morning, Daisy and August took the rock sample to the assay office, a small building near the mining district, where an older gentleman named Mr. Peterson ran tests on ore samples for a fee. He studied their sample with professional interest, chipped off a small piece, and performed several tests while they waited anxiously. Finally, he looked up with a neutral expression that gave nothing away. "It's silver ore, about 7 ounces of silver per ton of rock. That's not exceptionally rich, but it's absolutely viable for commercial mining, especially if the vein is extensive." Daisy's face went white, then flushed with excitement. "You're certain?" "Certain," Mr. Peterson confirmed. "Where did this sample come from?" "My father's claim," Daisy said, her voice shaking. "The Zimmerman claim in the hills northeast of town." "Then congratulations, Miss Zimmerman. If you can find more of this vein, you've got yourself a working silver mine." They left the assay office in a daze. 7 ounces per ton might not sound like much, but August had been in Calico long enough to know that was respectable, enough to make mining profitable if they could access enough ore. Daisy's father had been right all along. There was silver in those hills. They'd just been one tunnel away from finding it. "He knew," Daisy said as they walked back toward the boarding house. "My father, he knew it was there. He just ran out of time to find it." "But you found it," August said. "You kept faith with his dream, and now you found what he was looking for." Daisy stopped walking and turned to face August fully, right there in the middle of the street. "We found it. You're the one who noticed that rock formation. If you hadn't been there, I would have done the usual maintenance and left, never knowing it was right there waiting to be discovered." "Luck," August said, But Daisy shook her head. Not luck. Partnership. This is what I meant about building something together. You helped me, and together we found something neither of us would have found alone. She reached up to touch his face, oblivious to the people passing around them on the street. That's what matters, August. Not money, not status, not any of those things your former fiancé was chasing. Just two people who see each other and choose to build something together. August kissed her then, right there in public, and felt like he was finally, truly home. The next few months transformed everything. Daisy filed the proper permits to begin commercial mining operations on her father's claim, using the modest profits from the boarding house to hire a crew of experienced miners. August worked alongside them, learning the trade, and was amazed to discover he had an aptitude for it. The greenish ore vein extended deeper into the mountain than any of them had hoped, and by August, they were pulling out enough silver to make the claim genuinely profitable. But more than the silver, what mattered to August was building this with Daisy. They worked as true partners, making decisions together, supporting each other through the challenges of running a small mining operation. The boarding house continued to thrive under Daniel's management, and between the two businesses, the Zimmerman family's fortunes improved dramatically. Money started coming in, not massive wealth but steady income that meant security, comfort, the ability to plan for a future. And through it all, August watched Daisy carefully, looking for any sign that the money would change her, would make her into someone like Melissa who valued dollars over character. It never happened. If anything, the financial success made Daisy more generous, more committed to the community. She used some of the first profits to repair the local school, to help families who were struggling, to support other prospectors who were still chasing their dreams in the hills. One evening in late September, as they sat together watching the sunset from the boarding house porch, August finally put words to what had been growing in his heart for months. "Daisy, I want to ask you something." She turned to look at him, the evening light making her eyes glow amber gold. "What is it? This morning, I was supposed to get married to someone else. My life was supposed to go in a completely different direction. But that woman left because I didn't have enough money, couldn't give her the life she thought she deserved." August took Daisy's hands in his. "Now we have money, the mine is successful, but that's not why I'm asking this. I'm asking because I love you, because you've shown me what real partnership looks like, because I can't imagine building a life with anyone else." Daisy's eyes were shining with tears. "August, Daisy Zimmerman, will you marry me? Not because of the mine or the money or any practical consideration, but because I love you and want to spend my life with you." "Yes," Daisy said, and she was laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, of course, yes. I love you too, August. I have for months. I kept waiting for you to say something." August pulled a ring from his pocket, a simple silver band he'd had made from the first ore pulled from the mine, engraved with both their initials. "I wanted to wait until I was sure, until I knew beyond doubt that what I felt was real and not just reaction to being hurt. But Daisy, you're the realest thing in my life. You're everything I didn't know I was looking for." He slipped the ring onto her finger and she stared at it with wonder. "It's perfect. You're perfect. This whole impossible thing is perfect." They married in November, a simple ceremony in Calico's small church with Daniel standing up as best man and half the town in attendance. August wore his best suit, still modest but clean and pressed, and Daisy wore her mother's wedding dress, altered to fit, cream-colored lace that made her look luminous. As August watched her walk down the aisle, he thought about that terrible day back in May when Melissa had left him, when he'd ridden into the desert feeling like his life was over. He thought about the sound of Daisy calling for help, the choice to stop instead of riding past, all the small decisions and moments of fate that had led them to this point. The preacher spoke about love and commitment, about building a life together through good times and bad, and August felt the truth of those words in his bones. This was what marriage was supposed to be, not a transaction or a practical arrangement, but a choice to stand together against whatever came. "I do," August said when the moment came, his voice clear and certain. "I do," Daisy echoed, and her smile could have lit up the desert night. They kissed as husband and wife, and the church erupted in applause. As they walked back down the aisle together, August caught sight of Melissa in the back pew. She'd returned to Calico a month ago, her engagement to the mine owner having fallen apart when his mine played out and his wealth evaporated. She looked older now, harder, and August felt only compassion for her, no anger, no lingering hurt. She'd taught him an important lesson, even if she hadn't meant to. She'd shown him what he didn't want, what wasn't real, and in doing so had prepared him to recognize the genuine article when he found it. The reception was held at the boarding house, with food and music and dancing that lasted well into the night. August danced with his wife, the word still feeling new and wonderful, and felt happiness so complete it was almost frightening. "What are you thinking?" Daisy asked, reading his expression as they swayed to the music. "That I'm too happy," August admitted. "That's something this good can't possibly last." "It can if we work for it," Daisy said seriously. "Love isn't just a feeling, August. It's a choice we make every day to see each other, to support each other, to build together. As long as we keep choosing each other, this will last." "I'll keep choosing you," August promised. "Every day for the rest of my life." "Then we'll be fine," Daisy said, and kissed him there on the dance floor, surrounded by friends and family and community, sealed in love that had nothing to do with money and everything to do with seeing and being seen for who they truly were. They moved into a small house near the boarding house, a modest place with 2 bedrooms and a kitchen, and a porch where they could sit and watch the desert sunsets. August continued working the mine, managing operations with a skill that surprised even him, while Daisy split her time between the mining office and the boarding house, still making supply runs to the claim twice a month, though now August always went with her. Their first year of marriage was not without challenges. Mining was unpredictable, and there were weeks when the ore ran thin, and they worried about whether the vein would hold. There were disputes with neighboring claims, equipment breakdowns, a cave-in that thankfully injured no one, but cost them 2 weeks of work and significant money to repair. Through it all, they faced everything together, making decisions as partners, supporting each other through stress and uncertainty. August learned that Daisy was at her best in crisis, calm and analytical when things went wrong. Daisy discovered that August had a gift for managing people, for inspiring loyalty in their mining crew through fair treatment and genuine respect. By their second anniversary in November of 1883, the mine was solidly profitable, producing consistent yields that allowed them to expand operations and hire more workers. They'd become respected members of the community, known for their fairness and generosity. And they'd started talking about children. "I want 3, Daisy said one night as they lay in bed, her head on August's chest. "Maybe 4. I want a big family, want this house full of noise and chaos and love." 3 or 4 sounds perfect, August agreed, running his fingers through her hair. "Though with your stubbornness and my tendency to brood, they're going to be a handful." "Good," Daisy said. "I wouldn't want boring children." Their first child arrived in August of 1884, a healthy baby boy they named David after Daisy's father. August held his son for the first time and felt his entire world shift, love expanding to include this tiny person who depended on them completely. "He's perfect," Daisy said from the bed, exhausted but glowing. "He has your nose." "Poor kid," August joked, but his voice was rough with emotion. "David Garrett, it's a good, strong name." "Your father would have been proud," Daniel said from the doorway, smiling at his sister and new nephew. "He'd be proud of both of you, of everything you've built." Daisy's eyes filled with tears. "I wish he could have seen this, could have known that his claim finally paid off, that his grandchild will grow up with security and opportunity." "He knows," Daniel said with certainty. "Somewhere he knows." As David grew from baby to toddler, August marveled at the life they'd built. The mine continued to produce, yielding enough that they could provide comfortable lives for their workers and still save for the future. They'd expanded the house, adding rooms for the family they were building, a library that Daisy insisted on filling with books, a workshop where August could tinker with mining equipment and other projects. Their second child, a daughter they named Delilah, arrived in the spring of 1886, followed 2 years later by another son they called Dennis. The house was indeed full of noise and chaos and love, exactly as Daisy had wanted. August would sometimes sit on the porch in the evenings, watching his children play in the yard while Daisy worked on paperwork at the table beside him, and marvel at how different his life had turned out from what he'd planned. If Melissa hadn't left him, if he hadn't ridden into the desert that day, if he hadn't heard Daisy calling for help, none of this would exist. "You're brooding again," Daisy said without looking up from her ledgers. "I can feel you thinking too hard." "Just counting blessings," August said. "Wondering what I did to deserve all this." "You were yourself," Daisy said simply, setting down her pen to look at him. "You were kind when you could have been bitter. You took a risk on love again when you could have closed your heart. You worked hard and built something real. That's what you did." "We built something real," August corrected. "I couldn't have done any of this without you." "That's the point," Daisy said, reaching over to take his hand. "We're partners. We build together. That's what makes it work." David ran up to the porch then, his face dirty and his knees scraped from some adventure in the yard. "Papa, come play. Dennis is being a bandit and I need a deputy." August laughed and stood, letting his son pull him into the game. This was life, messy and imperfect and absolutely beautiful. This was what mattered, not money or status or any of the things he'd once thought were important. Just family, partnership, love that was chosen every single day years past, bringing both joy and sorrow. Daniel met a widow who'd come to Calico with her young daughter, and after a year of courtship, they married, combining their families and expanding the boarding house to accommodate everyone. The mine continued to produce, though they hit lean periods that required careful management and occasionally tough decisions about operations. Daisy's mining crew became almost like extended family, men who'd been with them since the beginning, who trusted them to treat them fairly and pay them honestly. When times were good, August and Daisy shared the profits. When times were lean, they tightened their own belts before cutting anyone's wages. "This is how you build loyalty," Daisy explained to David one day when he was old enough to start learning about the family business. "You treat people with respect, you keep your word, you remember that money comes and goes but reputation lasts forever." "Is that why everyone in town likes us?" David asked with the directness of a child. "We're not running a popularity contest," August said. "But yes, treating people right tends to work out well for everyone involved." In 1890, when August was 33 and Daisy was 31, they decided to expand their operations. The mine had proven extensive enough to support multiple tunnels, and they had the capital to invest in better equipment, more workers, more systematic extraction. It's a risk, Daisy said as they reviewed the plans. If the vein runs out sooner than we think, we could lose a lot of money. And if it doesn't, we could set up our children and grandchildren for generations, August countered. Sometimes you have to take calculated risks. Listen to you, Daisy teased. Remember when you were just a ranch hand with no prospects? I remember when you were just a woman with a broken wagon wheel and a sprained ankle, August shot back. We've both come a long way. They took the risk, and it paid off. The expanded operations uncovered another vein of silver ore, this one even richer than the first. By 1892, the Zimmerman mine, as it was officially called, was one of the most productive in the region, employing over 50 men and producing consistently high yields. Success brought its own challenges. There were offers to buy the mine, some of them from the very people who'd once dismissed August as a poor ranch hand with no future. Charles, Melissa's former fiancé whose own mine had failed, even approached them with a proposition to partner on a new claim. Absolutely not, Daisy said flatly when August told her about the offer. That man treated you terribly, and anyone who measures worth purely in dollars isn't someone I want to do business with. He's fallen on hard times, August said. Maybe he's learned something. Maybe he has, and if so, good for him. But we've built this honestly, with our own hands and our own values. I'm not going to compromise that for any partnership, no matter how potentially profitable. August loved her fierceness, the way she held to principles even when it might cost them. You're right. I'll decline the offer. They declined many offers over the years, choosing instead to keep the mine family owned and operated, bringing David into the business as he grew older, teaching him everything they knew about mining, about business, about treating people right. Melissa had stayed in Calico, remarried eventually to a shopkeeper, a modest man who seemed to genuinely care for her. August would see her occasionally in town, and they'd exchange polite greetings, nothing more. She'd become just part of his past, a chapter that had led him to something better. In 1895, August and Daisy celebrated their 14th wedding anniversary with their 3 children, now 11, 9, and 7. In the house they'd expanded several times to accommodate their growing family. They'd added a 4th child in 1893, another daughter named Deanna, completing their family exactly as Daisy had once dreamed. Did you ever think, that day I found you by the broken wagon, that this is where we'd end up? August asked as they sat on the porch after putting the children to bed. No, Daisy admitted. That day I was just scared and hurt and trying to figure out how to get home. I definitely wasn't thinking about falling in love with my rescuer. When did you know? August asked. That this was real, that it could be something. Daisy thought about it. When you helped me rescue that bird from the boarding house chimney, remember? About a month after my ankle healed, you spent 2 hours carefully coaxing it out when you could have just lit a fire and been done with it. That's when I knew you were the kind of man who cared about things, who treated even small creatures with kindness. That's when I started falling in love with you. I remember that bird, August said, laughing. Ungrateful thing pecked me 3 times before it finally flew out. But you were so patient with it, Daisy said. That's what mattered. Your patience, your kindness, your genuine character. Those are the things that made me love you, and they're the things I still love about you today. I love you too, August said, pulling her close. Thank you for showing me that love isn't about money or status or any of those things I thought mattered. Thank you for teaching me what's real. We taught each other, Daisy corrected. That's what partners do. As the years continued, August and Daisy grew older together, watching their children grow into young adults with their own dreams and ambitions. David took over management of the mine when he was 21, showing the same fair leadership and business acumen his parents had modeled. Delilah became a teacher, opening a school for miners' children that Daisy helped fund. Dennis showed an aptitude for engineering, going off to study in San Francisco before returning to improve mining operations with innovative equipment designs. Deanna, the youngest, had her mother's fierce independence and her father's quiet strength, and eventually took over management of the boarding house from her uncle Daniel. The Zimmerman mine continued producing through the turn of the century, though yields naturally decreased as the richest veins were exhausted. August and Daisy had planned for this, saving and investing wisely so that when production eventually slowed, they had other sources of income and security. In 1905, when August was 48 and Daisy was 46, they made the decision to close the mine. The remaining ore wasn't rich enough to justify the cost of extraction, and both of them had reached a point where they wanted to slow down, to enjoy their grandchildren and the life they'd built without the constant demands of mining operations. "We had a good run," August said as they stood at the mine entrance for the last time, looking at the dark tunnel that had provided for them and their family for over 2 decades. "More than good," Daisy said. "Extraordinary. My father would have been so proud of what we did with his dream." They sealed the mine entrance and had a plaque made, commemorating David Zimmerman's faith and vision. Then they turned their attention to other things, to family and community, to the quiet pleasures of a life well lived. August took up woodworking, creating beautiful furniture for his children and grandchildren. Daisy wrote a book about women in mining, documenting the stories of the many women who'd contributed to the industry in ways history often overlooked. They traveled some, taking a trip to San Francisco and another to Arizona, but always returned to Calico, to the desert they'd both fallen in love with on their 30th wedding anniversary in November of 1911. Their children threw them a huge celebration at the boarding house. The whole town turned out, people whose lives had been touched by August and Daisy's generosity and fairness over the years. Speeches were made, stories were told, and through it all, August held Daisy's hand, marveling at how much life they'd lived together. They'd faced losses, had buried friends and weathered economic downturns, and dealt with all the normal trials of raising a family. But through everything, they'd chosen each other, had built something real and lasting that went far beyond any material success. "What do you think?" Daisy asked as they danced together, still moving well together after all these years. Was it worth it, all the hard work and challenges and uncertainty? "Every second," August said without hesitation. "You're the best thing that ever happened to me, Daisy. You and this life we built together, this family, all of it. I wouldn't change a single thing. Not even the part where your fiancé left you for a richer man," Daisy asked with a slight smile. "Especially not that part," August said firmly, "because it led me to you. It taught me to value what's real, what matters. Melissa did me a favor, though she didn't know it. She freed me to find genuine love, real partnership. I should probably thank her." "Let's not get carried away," Daisy said, laughing, "but I understand what you mean. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us lead us to the best things. Sometimes what feels like the end is really just the beginning." They danced on, surrounded by family and friends, by the community they'd helped build, by the evidence of a life lived with purpose and love. As the evening wore on, and the stars came out over the desert they both loved, August reflected on the journey that had brought him here. He'd arrived in Calico as a ranch hand with modest dreams and a broken engagement. He'd found a woman with a sprained ankle and a fierce heart. Together, they'd discovered silver, built a successful business, raised a family, and created something that would last long after they were gone. But more than any of that, they'd proven something that August had desperately needed to learn on that terrible day in May of 1881, when Melissa's wagon had rolled away. Love wasn't about money. It wasn't about what you could provide or what status you could offer. It was about seeing someone fully, choosing them daily, building something together that was greater than what either could build alone. That lesson, learned through pain and proven through years of partnership with Daisy, was worth more than all the silver in California, all the gold in the West. It was the treasure that couldn't be mined from the earth, because it was forged between two hearts that chose each other against all odds and kept choosing each other through everything life brought. As August and Daisy walked home that night, arms around each other, their children and grandchildren calling goodnight behind them, August felt profound gratitude for every twist of fate that had brought him to this moment. The heartbreak, the chance rescue, the broken wagon wheel, all of it had been necessary to lead him here, to this woman, to this life, to this understanding of what really mattered. "I love you," he told Daisy as they reached their porch, the same porch where they'd sat for 30 years watching sunsets and raising children and building dreams. "I love you too," Daisy said, and kissed him with all the passion and affection of a woman who'd spent 3 decades choosing the same man and had never once regretted it. They went inside together, into the home they'd made, surrounded by the life they'd built, secure in the knowledge that whatever challenges tomorrow might bring, they'd face them as they'd faced everything else. Together, as partners, as lovers, as two people who'd learned that the greatest treasure wasn't what you could dig from the earth, but what you could build with your hands and your heart and your unwavering choice to love. The mine might be closed now, the silver extracted, the tunnels sealed, but what August and Daisy had created would endure. Their children carried their values forward, treating others with fairness and respect, building their own lives on the foundation of genuine love and partnership their parents had modeled. Their grandchildren would grow up hearing stories about the ranch hand and the prospector's daughter who found each other in the desert, and built an empire not through ruthless ambition, but through honest work and mutual respect. In the end, that was the real legacy, not money or property or business success, but the proof that love built on truth and partnership could not only survive but thrive, could create something beautiful and lasting that enriched not just two people but entire communities. August fell asleep that night with Daisy beside him, as she'd been beside him for 30 years, and his last thought before dreams took him was simple gratitude. Gratitude for heartbreak that had opened him to something real, for a chance meeting on a desert trail, for a woman who'd shown him that his former fiancée had been wrong, that he was worth more than his bank account, worth more than any material measure. He was worth love, genuine and freely given, built on who he was rather than what he could provide. And in Daisy, he'd found someone who saw that worth and reflected it back to him every day, someone who'd built a life with him based on partnership and respect, and the simple choice to keep choosing each other. That was worth more than all the silver they'd ever mined, more than any wealth or status or success. That was the real treasure, and August and Daisy had spent 30 years proving it, building it, living it out in every decision and challenge and triumph. Their story would be told in Calico for generations. The tale of how a heartbroken ranch hand and a stranded woman with a sprained ankle had found each other in the desert and built something extraordinary, not because they had money but because they had each other, not because they were lucky but because they worked for it, chose it, earned it through years of partnership and love. And as the desert night settled over their home, over the town they'd helped build, over the sealed mine that had funded their dreams. The stars shone down on a completed story, a finished tale, a life fully lived and a love fully realized. August Garrett and Daisy Zimmerman Garrett slept peacefully, surrounded by the evidence of their choices, secure in the love they'd built and the legacy they'd leave, having learned and proven the greatest lesson of all. That love wasn't about money, never had been, never would be, but was instead about seeing and being seen, about choosing and being chosen, about building something together that could weather any storm and last beyond any individual life. Their happily ever after wasn't a fairy tale ending but a lived reality, earned through years of daily choices to love, to support, to build together. And it was enough, more than enough. It was everything.